Yeah, hello everybody. As mentioned, I'm Ingrid. I'm the head of the Secretariat. It's my pleasure. I will try to provide some theory on the topic before we see the country examples. And if I say theory, I'm referring to the work that we have been doing in the DCDVET, in the donor committee, thinking of the different aspects of dual VT, and maybe for this, I'd like to start with a clarification, because I think you mentioned there are several terms out there, and what we always can see is that in many contexts we are talking about the same things with different terms, and sometimes we talk about different things with the same terms and vice versa. So it's very good at the beginning to clarify a little bit what we are talking about. And as far as I've seen that there are some colleagues here from Georgia, for example, I know that you are using the term work-based learning, which is quite common, and you distinguish between cooperative learning and dual learning. If we in the DCDVA talk about VT, we mostly refer to a dual concept and to dual learning, which is here in the center. This is a graph that you can find in one of our policy briefs if you are interested to dive deeper in definitions, etc. But to summarize a little bit, is for us, dual VT is a specific type of work-based learning. I think here we can leave it like this, and if you're interested, dive deeper into the discussion. But there are some notions and there are some aspects that we think are really critical if we think about dual VT systems. If you are interested in, and here you can find a whole list. When we thought, okay, what do we refer to by dual? We talk about ownership, we talk about learning venues, we talk a certain ratio between business and classroom training. I think this is the same, for example, in Georgia with 50-50. We talk about the status of the learners. Are they employees or students? Do they have a contract or not? In our case, we define they should be considered as employees with a contract, and we know that it's quite difficult to apply this in all the contexts because of legal status, ages, labor protection laws, etc. If we talk about dual VT, we talk about 1 year of at least minimum 1 year. So we do distinguish it from short courses and very modular approaches. And of course, we want training that is officially, formally recognized and delivered by very qualified staff. These are critical aspects for us. And I think what we are referring to is mainly today is about this ownership. So we define it for a dual system. We need a shared ownership, including talking about money and financing, with clear defined roles and responsibilities between the public institutions and the private sector. So the private sector, however you want to call it, is in a driving seat in this type of systems. So this was just to frame a little bit our discussion. What we are talking about today is the role of meso-level institutions or business interest associations, and why are they important here? I mean, I hope you can already see this linkage if we talk about shared ownership. So there is a shared ownership, and that's why there is a role for the private sector, and in this case it can be represented by the business meso-level institutions. And that's why we talk about co-governance, which is the topic of today, because what we can see in many contexts, and somebody of you asked, okay, I'm interested in why is it so complicated in some context, and I think it is sometimes it's difficult because we have a weak involvement of the private sector and a weak involvement of the employers. Maybe they are consulted from time to time, but not in a systematic way. Maybe because there's a project out there that says, okay, we have to work with the private sector, so let's spread out and see who wants to be part of the project. Sometimes the business associations are asked on their opinion, or sometimes they are only invited. Let's put it in a dramatic way. So there are initiatives, maybe public ones, also private ones, with a weak implementation, meaning that we invite the private sector for maybe for a ceremony or for a press release, a conference or whatever, but it's not really because we need to show that we are in touch. So what we can see, and that's why it's difficult, also the implementation of dual VT, is because there is weak ownership, low commitment, and a limited impact, and the training quality means if the business associations, and we give them a very important role, that if they are not involved, we can see effects on the quality of the training. So what we can see then, or what we are advocating for, is co-governance, and a very important role for the chambers of business associations in the meso level institutions, with shared responsibility, and really not just showing up, but also being part of the decision making with accountability. So there is a responsibility and a shared responsibility and ownership between the state and the organized business sector. Otherwise, as you can see, if it's only informal and then there is no decision power. If it's only occasional advice, it's not continuous. If it's only on a project basis and not in a systemic way, there is not a lot of impact on it. And if it's only symbolic, as I mentioned, maybe for inviting for a ceremony, there is no influence. So what we are aiming for is real co-governance. And what does it require? I mean, it's kind of I always use this term of this picture of a marriage. So if there is just one spouse really with all the power and decision making, so what is the part of the other one? So in real life, in our marriages, I hope in yours as well, we are defining roles and responsibilities. So this is your strength and you care about this topic, and I take over the responsibility for another one. So both sides should come in with their strengths and where they have power. So we need defined roles and the responsibilities. We need
yes. Just one question. I've been seeing one slide of vet systems and terminology. Is that correct? Classification and clarification?
No, I've already moved. It's good.
It's good, Lisa. I'll write you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. So we need roles and responsibilities clarified. We need a structured participation. Could be committees, boards, and not occasionally. I hope I made this clear. And we need share accountability. So it's not about a struggle of powers. And I've seen this in several of my projects as well, that there is a little bit, let's say, suspicion. Yeah. So people from maybe a ministry or school, like, okay, these business people, like, suspicious, but the business people, like, this education sector, suspicious. So it's not about that, who is better or not. It's about really designing systems that work together, and really let's bring in the two perspectives in order to have better results and relevant skills. So this is a lot of, let's say, maybe this was a kind of an introduction, but the question is, where do the business associations fit in now? So if you have those, comes from our, let's say, Dachli origins, but it is quite true that we somehow need it in all of the countries where we talk about these systems that we have on a macro level. We have the political institutions, the government, the ministries, parliament, TVET agencies who shape the systems. And on a micro level, we have the companies, the schools, the learners, the parents, the students, and and the teachers, not named here, but very, very important as part of the schools. And what the business associations are really strong in is to build this bridge, to bridge between all these levels. And this could be done also by trade unions, by employer organizations, by sector skills councils are maybe known. So whoever represents and can make this bridging and build these bridges between policy level and say micro level on the ground where the training is happening. And this is the most complex slide that I have. That's why I will dedicate some minutes there, because it's quite rich and it really summarizes what the many, many things that business associations can do in such a system. What is really important, maybe traditionally, business associations, and in your context as well, they tend to be lobbying organizations. In some contexts, we have many, and we have to see, okay, who is really representing the business sector. And in dual VT, the business associations, they really become system actors, problem solvers, and co-governors. This is really what summarizes what I mentioned in my introduction, that they should have a role there. So somebody has to take up this role of coordination, of bridging. And if we have a deeper look at this, we can classify, and there are many different classifications out there, what the associations can do. One is represent the employer's needs and translate them into the system. So we do not want to talk about with single voices from several, maybe more influential companies. The goal is really to represent the sector. The second one is more as a service. The associations can support the companies in their training activities. They have, in our countries and in many, they have a very strong role in quality assurance. And they are intermediaries in the sense of coordination bodies or mediation if there is a problem. So let's say something like this, do a lot of matching and really bridge building here. And if we have a look now at these four categories, the first one, if we talk about employer needs and voicing them somehow, the activities that the business associations do is they collect inputs from their companies. So what do our companies really need? And we will have for sure hear the voice from Christian from Ecuador in his sector. They define the occupational standards and contribute to curriculum. Sometimes they're just called to participate, but we want to give them a really active voice there. So it's the companies who know what is needed on the labor market and what will be needed on the labor market. So they should have a very strong say in what should be trained and what the occupational standards are like. Then they have a role to ensure that the training really reflects this real work needs. That's what I just mentioned. And also aggregate, and I already mentioned it, aggregate the voices of the sector. So in some contexts, we have, for example, very powerful companies or people with close linkages to the government, for example, and they say, okay, we need this and that in our sector as a training activity. But what the business associations are good at is really to represent the whole sector and provide this policy input really in a representable way. So they have to make sure, are we talking for the whole sector? So this is their nature. That's why they are good in this role. The second one here in support the companies, it's about providing information, guidance, especially for the small and medium-sized companies who start training. Okay, sometimes they are, let's say, a little bit lost. It looks like a big deal. So a business association can be there to help them structure those processes, find the right information, and how to deal with the trainees. They, in some contexts, which is interesting as well, the business associations, if the companies are not strong enough to deliver the whole, let's say, set of skills that should be delivered in the training, then they can arrange for intercompany trainings, and which is and also promote for the attractiveness. So I'm not sure what it's like in your context. In many contexts, this vocational education and training is not the first choice. We have to struggle, and that's even true for Austria, Germany, and Switzerland as well. We have to promote for the attractiveness of the system, for the image of VT, and for these occupations. And this is something that our chambers and associations are good at, and which is a real natural role for them. In quality assurance, they participate in exams, organizing, making sure that the ones who deliver the trainings are not the ones who will later on take the exams. So there is a certain quality and neutrality. Also monitor the training qualities, support the qualification of trainers, because we need people very well prepared in the companies also to deliver training on the workplace. And they need some kind of preparation and qualification. And as mentioned, if we talk about this last column here, coordination and mediation. So business associations can be the neutral intermediaries between companies and schools, companies and the trainees, or the companies and the government. So this is really a bridging function, as mentioned several times. And they are there if there's a conflict as well. So in many cases, chambers also take over the role of, okay, if there's a problem and the company, let's say, wants to change, or the trainee wants to change to companies, so they're also there to help resolve those conflicts, which are natural in each educational system as well. And very interesting, in some contexts, they also have a role of co-governing funding instruments. For example, we have systems with levies that fund the training activities, and business associations are those who govern them. So what you can see here is really the whole range of activities that mid-level institutions or business interest associations can do in these systems. And maybe you're here and say, whoa, this is very much so, I can do this, and where should I start from? And it's clear that in our systems, and in many systems, and I'm really happy to see that 50% of our audience here has more than 6 years of implementation experience, so you know what it's like. So we do not start with the whole picture there. We have to see, okay, where to start from. So because in many systems we have a limited cooperation, low trust, and we have to a weak employee involvement, which is quite natural. So we have to start slowly, and it takes time. So don't rush. In our systems, it took us centuries to build what we have, and we're still working on it, and we still have to work on it. And in other contexts, this maybe Christian, you can also give testimony on how long does it take to really build up a system. So it's a really step by step, and it should evolve gradually. So there are no shortcuts. Don't rush through, and don't try everything at the first glance. And with this, do I have still time, Lisa? 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, thank you. That's perfect, because here, what you can see here is kind of a timeline. So maybe you're here and say, okay, where shall I start from? We have classified the roles and the activities of the business associations, let's say, in 3 stages. Here at the early stage, at the intermediary stage, and then in the mature systems, the roles and activities change. And what you can see here, maybe the minimum feasible, what you can do at the beginning is participate in awareness raising, promote the apprenticeships, and provide basic advisory support, facilitate communication, start with this matching and voicing, and maybe also, if there are already exams in place, support the logistics of the exam if needed, in order to position the business association as well as an actor in this whole examination process. This is one, and it's a possibility, and it depends a lot on your context, because if in context where it's extremely well organized and already regulated how these, for example, exams already work, there's no need to support in logistics. In other contexts where there's no regulation, there's not a lot of idea on how to organize and take these exams and make sure that they really correspond to what the business sector needs, then you have a role there. So it's up to you to decide and pick and choose, and I think this will be part of the discussions in the breakout session. In an intermediary stage, then you start participating in committees and set up the networks and provide occupational standards or the inputs for it, and start really representing formally in a formal way the sector positions. And in more advanced systems like here, then it's really on joint decision making on the regulations and have a responsibility in the exams, participate in the steering committees, so even set up the steering committees, administer the funding mechanisms, and also have a legal mandate. So in our, for example, if you have seen the examples from Germany, Austria, or Switzerland, you see that we have legal mandates for our business associations, and that's there's no discussion on their role, but this is something that has to develop. So VAT is not a cure for everything. We know it. We know that we need time to develop it. And there is one aspect that I have not mentioned yet, but I think it's really crucial, is really also to think about disadvantaged groups, and they must be addressed. And this is maybe something that should also be discussed between the private sector and the public sector, and which approaches are necessary for it. In our cases, it's also a lot of responsibility for the public institutions to work on this, and really to bring together with the initiatives of the private sector. And sometimes there are context-specific or sector-specific approaches are really essential. So answering the question, why is it so difficult? It's because it's so complex, and it really depends a lot on the context. So as a key takeaway, I want to leave maybe this with you. There is no need to start with the full-fledged dual system, maybe in the beginning, which could like seem quite scary at the beginning if I was a business association. But it's really to go step by step, start small, see, okay, what is already working in my context? And where can I start from? So build this experience and grow over time. And I think we will have very exciting examples and recommendations from all over the world today, in 3 continents. But what I can see from a DCDVAT perspective point of view, the questions are always the same, no matter where you are. And in the end, is finding really the right doses and building the correct bridges. And this has to be done context specific, but the principles are quite the same all over the world. And with this, I thank you for your time. I look forward to discuss with you further. And with this, I give back to you, Lisa.